welcome back. I'm John, old YouTuber. I'm a little bit sleepy today and I need a shower and a shaving. But I have not drank any alcohol or beers this weekend, so it's not why I'm sleepy. I'm not drinking beers for like 6 years. So actually I would like to read about the Ganges River or India or something else. But I think we have to stick to my plan to read about these things. But I'm not going to. I don't have energy to spend my next months just to read about things. I have to read about something else because I'm not. I'm not loving tanks. I'm not loving weapons or tanks or Russian tanks or war and stuff. I better like to read about something else. Like a river, could be Mississippi River, Ganges, India, something else. But now I spent so many hours to find many hundreds. And I was to read about the main battle tanks, the different kind of main battle tanks from the different kind of countries, because we have this war in Ukraine and we have this all kind of tanks on the battlefield, all this Russian T-72 and the Ukrainian the T-84 and the T-64. This is the T-62. But we still need the newer one, the T-90 and T-40, the Russian. And then we still need all the Western main battle tanks like the Challenger 2, 1, 2 and 3, and the France and something else. So there's lots more. So let's just read this. But actually I would like to read something else because I'm not in love with weapons or tanks. I would better like to read about something more interesting, a country or a Mississippi River or the Nile River or Egypt, something else. But now I spend so much time to do this. Sound level is 50. And I have this problem with this camcorder. It takes 24 hours to charging. So I think you have to keep recording with this camcorder, because this camcorder you can see the text. So let's try. And I made a video in Danish. I have a playlist with a video Danish about tanks. I will have to do after this. But today I'm a little bit sleepy and I would like to read something else than weapons or tanks. But I have to stick to my plan.
T-62 T-6262.jpg T-62 at the Russian Museum of Military History. Type main battle tank. Place of origin Soviet Union. Service history. In service 1961. Present used by sea operator Swashi. Combat history. Production history. Designer OP 520. Design Bureau. Manufacturer Rural Vagan Zavard. Unit cost US $300,000. Export price to Egypt 1972 1. Produced 1961-1975, USSR, tilde 1980s, North Korea, no built more than 22,700 specifications, T-62, mass 37 T, 41 short tons, 36 long tons, length 9.34 m, 30 feet 8 in, with barrel in forward position 6.63 m, 21 feet 9 in. Hollandly width 3.30 m, 10 feet 10 in, height 2.40 m, 7 feet 10 in. Crew 4, commander, driver gunner, loader. The T-62 is a Soviet medium tank that was first introduced in 1961.8, as a further development of the T-55 series. The T-62 retained many similar design elements of its predecessor, including low-profile and turret armor. In contrast with previous tanks which were armed with rifled tank guns, the T-62 was first production tank armed with a smoothbore tank that could fire APFS rounds at higher velocities. While the T-62 became the standard tank in the Soviet arsenal, it did not fully replace the T-55 in export markets due to its higher manufacturing costs and maintenance requirements compared to its predecessor. Although it was followed by later models in successor states of the Soviet Union, the T-62 remained in reserve in the former USSR and in frontline use by other countries. Design features of the T-62 became standardized in subsequent Soviet and Russian mass-produced tanks. Development history. The initial requirements. By the late 1950s, Soviet commanders realized that the T-55's 100mm gun could not penetrate the frontal armor of newer Western tanks, such as the Centurion and M48 pattern, with standard armor-piercing shells. While 100mm high-explosive anti-tank, heat, ammunition could have done the job, they were much less accurate than APDS shells, and the relatively low flight velocity resulted in poorer accuracy if used on moving targets. It was decided to upgun the T-55 with a 115mm smoothbore gun, able to fire kinetic energy penetrator armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, APFS, rounds. 9. Trials showed that the T-55 was inherently unsuited to mount the larger weapon, and work began on a new tank. The bigger gun required a bigger turret and turret ring to absorb the higher recoil. This in turn necessitated a larger hull, as the T-55 hull was simply armor-cast turret, 2.3.214, 242 after 1972, mm turret front, 4.2.3.153 turret sides, 4.2.3. 97mm turret rear, 4.2.3.40mm turret roof, 4.2.3. Hull 102mm at 60 degrees hull front, 4.2.3. 79mm hull upper sides, 4.2.3. 15mm hull lower sides, 4.2.3. 46mm at 0 degrees hull rear, 4.2.3. 20mm hull bottom, 4.2.3. 31mm hull roof, 4.2.3. Main armament 115mm U5TS, 2 a 20, smoothbore gun, 5. Secondary armament 7.62mm PKT coaxial general purpose machine gun, 2,500 rounds. 12.7mm DSHK 1938/46 anti-aircraft heavy machine gun. Optional until T-62 Ob. 1972. 6. Engine V55 12-cylinder 4-stroke 1-chamber 38.88-liter water cooler diesel 581 HP, 433 kilowatts, at 2,000 rpm power /weight 14.5 HP /ton, 10.8 kilowatt /ton. Suspension torsion bar ground clearance 425mm, 16.7 in, 6. Fuel capacity 960 L, 6. 1,360 L with two 200-liter extra fuel tanks, 6. Operational range 450 km, 280 mi, on road, 650 km, 400 mi, width. Too small to accept the new turret. The T-62 thus took shape, marking an evolutionary improvement on the T-55.9, Object 140. After delivery of the T-54 design, Its lead designer Alexander Morozov turned his attention to a new design, the Object 430. Object 430 had a hollow welded rolled steel plates and a turret of cast and forged steel. The turret had three-layer armor with an overall thickness of 185 mm to 240 mm. It was armed with the new 100 mm D-54TS tank gun. During this period, simpler upgrades to the existing T-54 design were assigned to a young engineer, Leonid Karpsev, the head of the OKB 520 Design Bureau of Ural-Vagonzavod Factory, UVZ, in Nizhny Tagil. He had already led the development of the relatively minor upgrades to the T-54 that produced the T-54A, Object 137G, and T-54B, Object 137G2, and began the development of a more major update as the T-54M, Object 139. When the T-54M was abandoned, he and his design team started working on a new tank, called Object 140. The new tank had a suspension with 6 light rotor wheels made of aluminium. The turret was cast and armed with the same D-54TS tank gun and included Harmonia 2-plane stabilization system. The tank carried 50 rounds and was powered by a V-36 diesel engine developed by engineer Artem Ijev. The engine was placed on the bottom of the hull, a solution that reduced the height of the engine compartment. The Object 140 weighed 37.6 tons. In 1957, Ural-Vagonzavod built 2 Object 140 prototypes which were put on trial soon after. The trials showed that because of the complicated construction of many of the tank's systems, Karpsev's tank would be expensive in serial production and hard to maintain. Forced to abandon the Object 140 project, Karpsev started working on yet another T-54 modernization called the Object 155. This design was more similar to the original T-54, but incorporated one useful feature. Two 200L, 53 US gal, 44 imp gal, extra fuel tanks, 320 km, 200 mi, cross country, 450 km, 280 mi, with two 200-liter extra fuel tanks, 7, maximum speed 50 km forward/h, 31 miles per hour, road, 40 km forward/h, 25 miles per hour, cross country. From the Object 140, the upper fuel tanks were fitted with mounts for tank gun ammunition. This increased ammunition load carried by the tank to 45 rounds. T-62, Object 165. At the end of 1958, Karpsev decided to modernize the Object 140 turret. He fitted it with a cartridge case ejector and mounted it onto a stretched T-55 chassis. He also considered that designs based on already produced vehicles had a higher chance of acceptance. The Object 140 turret diameter, bigger than the T-55 turret by 249 mm, made redesigning the central part of the hull necessary. 10. Karpsev changed the arrangement of the torsion beams, which was necessary to keep the tank's weight balanced. The tank received the designation Object 165 and in November 1958 3 prototypes were built. In January 1962, the Object 165 was accepted for service under the name T-62. In the same year Factory #183 produced 5 tanks that were put into experimental service. 10. Object 166. While working on a new tank, Karpsev was looking for a more powerful tank gun. The 100mm D10 and D54 tank guns had a fierce opponent in the form of the British L7A1 tank gun. the Soviets decided to recalibrate the already existing 100mm D-54TS tank gun. The modifications done to the gun included removing the rifling of the gun, reducing the profile of the bullet chamber, removing the muzzle brake, lengthening the gun tube, adding an automatic cartridge case ejector, and adding a bore evacuator in the middle of the gun tube, as opposed to the D-45TS tank gun, which had a bore evacuator in the base of the gun tube. The new 115mm tank gun was designated U-5TS Mollet Rapira. It was the first smoothbore tank gun. When it went into serial production, it received the designation TU-20. It was put in trials against the D-10TS tank gun, which armed the T-54B as well as some T-55 and T-55A medium tanks. These trials out that the under-caliber projectiles fired from the U-5TS had a nearly 200 m forward/sec higher muzzle velocity. It became apparent that the maximum range of the new tank gun was almost double that of the D-10TS. The only serious drawback of the U-5TS tank gun was the fact that it was not as accurate as the D-10TS, because of the lack of rifling. However, the greater range of the gun and its extremely high muzzle velocity made the poor accuracy less of an issue. The new U-5TS smoothbore tank gun was fitted into the Object 140 turret at the end of 1960. The new tank received the designation Object 166. In 1960, both Object 165 and Object 166 prototypes passed the trials. The Ural-Vagon-Zavod was preparing to start serial production of the new tank, though the General Armoured Directorate, GBTU, was paying much more attention to Morozov's Object 430, which was in development since early 1952. Morozov was supported by General Ustinov, who was in charge of the Soviet military industry at the time. He did not see it as necessary to produce the new tank from Ural-Vagon-Zavod, but soon the situation changed dramatically with the appearance of a new American main battle tank, the M60. In 1961, Soviet military intelligence discovered that Britain was working on a new main battle tank armed with a 120mm tank gun. Because of this, Marshal Vasily Chuikov, Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Army's ground forces, demanded an explanation of the Kartsev's tank's case. At a conference of GBTU and the Soviet Ground Forces Committee, it became apparent that Morozov's Object 430 tank was only 10% better than the serial T-55. Because of this, Morozov's project was deemed a complete failure. Though the representatives of Kharkiv Morozov Machine Building Design Bureau disclosed their work on the improved Object 432, which would ultimately become the T-64, Chuikov demanded that production of the Object 166 medium tank be started immediately. The OKB 520 Design Bureau of Ural-Vagon-Zavod provided another design, the Object 167, which was the Object 166 with a new more powerful V26 engine using a charger, developing 700 HP, 522 kilowatts. Two prototypes were built in the middle of 1961 and passed the trials. This time the GBTU decided not to wait for the new medium tank to pass trials and sent the Object 166 into mass production in July 1961. The Object 165 also entered service in very small numbers, under the designation T-62A.11 design. A U.S. Army recognition post of the T-62 has a typical tank layout: driver's compartment at the front, fighting compartment in the center and engine compartment in the rear. The four-man crew consists of the commander, driver, gunner and loader. Although the T-62 is very similar to the T-55 and makes use of many of the same parts, there are some differences. These include the hull, which is a few centimeters longer and wider, the different road wheels, and differences in characteristic uneven gaps between road wheels. Unlike the T-54 and T-55